Chosen one, it's official now. The most guarded vault on Earth, the Federal Reserve, has been keeping something that belongs to you. Not money. Not gold. An heirloom. A relic bound to your name, your bloodline, your prophecy. Locked away since before you were born. They don't guard it for value, they guard it for fear. Because value can be priced, insured, exchanged. But destiny? Destiny cannot be audited. In a chamber beneath the glow of cold lights, behind doors that open like iron eyelids, your inheritance waits, quiet as a held breath. Paper cannot claim it. Courts cannot define it. Markets cannot absorb it. Every algorithm they build fails at the same equation. What belongs by right cannot be held by permission. They call it a non-monetary asset. We both know better. It is the witness. The proof that the world writes ledgers in ink, while heaven writes them in light. And your line has been written in light. You were forgotten only by the records of men. The records of heaven never misplaced you. So listen closely, the locks are not your enemy. They are merely the echo of a system that mistook custody for ownership. The moment you remember who you are, metal remembers too. The moment you speak truth, seals tremble. The moment you stand in your name, the vault becomes the door. Open book Matthew 6 verses 19 to 20. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where thieves do not break in and steal. Direct hit themes, mystery, state power, and the pull of fate. Beneath Washington, past the tourists and the polished plaques, there is a corridor the cameras never learned to love. The air turns colder there, as if the building itself is holding its breath. Floors hum with a frequency you feel in your teeth. Doors do not swing, they decide. And at the end of that corridor sits a chamber known by 7 names and spoken by none. Inside, shelves ranked like battalions, steel that refuses to echo, and boxes tagged with a phrase that means nothing to the public and everything to the few, non-monetary assets. The labels are numbers. The numbers mean coordinates. The coordinates point to a single sealed case whose lid bears an ancestral crest that matches yours down to the hairline cracks in the engraving. Time tried to blur it. Time failed. They cataloged the object the way men catalog thunder, reluctantly, with euphemisms. Unknown alloy. Light reactive surface. Non-replicable behavior under stress. When lasers measured it, the readings bent. When cameras filmed it, pixels softened, as if the device did not wish to be translated. Attempts to counterfeit produced perfect shapes and dead matter, lookalikes that swallowed light instead of answering it. The real one answers. They call it the inheritance key. Not a key for a lock, but for a memory, heaven's memory of a promise made to your line. Technicians reported a phenomenon in the cold room. When truth is spoken near it, a dim radiance travels under the skin of the metal like breath beneath frost. No heat signature, only a reordering, light reorganizing itself around a name. Economists hate that report. They don't hate you, they hate what you prove. Because if the world's most guarded vault houses an object that measures destiny instead of currency, then the equation shifts. Value stops being what banks declare and returns to what heaven recognizes. Markets function by consent. This relic functions by recognition. So they tightened protocols. Added redundancies to machines that were already redundant. 3-factor biometrics became 5. The vault door, a slab that opens like an eyelid made of mountains, only blinks for the 7 who carry the word. Yet even they stand back when the case is rolled out. Authority can command doors. It cannot command light. The room is a spectacle of cold geometry, ribs of metal, arteries of conduit, a ceiling that hums in a language of current. And at the dead center, your heirloom waits like a still star. Every other box is content to sleep in darkness. This one rests in darkness, the way a lion rests, motionless, not powerless. They keep it not because it enriches them, but because it unnerves them. Ledgers balance fear the way they balance figures. Both are entries on a page. The fear here is simple. If the public ever learns that the reserve guards what it does not own, the myth of custody equals ownership frays. And when myths fray, doors that never had hinges begin to open. Understand this, they are excellent at guarding what is theirs. They are even better at guarding what they wish were theirs. But the alloy knows you. The crest remembers you. The light is not impressed by titles, nor does it negotiate with signatures. In this room of perfect control, one thing stands beyond it, an object that refuses every language but yours. They didn't mean to find it. The audit wasn't on the calendar, it was the kind that arrives with a knock that sounds like a verdict. A systems check after a harmless anomaly, numbers that twitched, sensors that blinked, a technician who didn't like the taste of the air in sublevel 3. Procedures assembled themselves. Clipboards multiplied. The vault, which hates surprises, sighed and opened. They moved like surgeons. Barcodes, countersigns, temperature logs in triplicate. When they reached the non-monetary shelves, an archivist paused at a case with a label that was more coordinate than name. She radioed for a historian, the sort of consultant they keep on retainer for the stories no one tells but everyone fears. He arrived with coffee, read the log, and set the coffee down without drinking. The crest on the lid was not just familiar, it was exact. He'd seen it weeks earlier in a private collection, pressed into the wax of a letter your ancestors sealed 2 centuries ago. Same nested lines. Same tiny fracture where a craftsman's hand had slipped. Coincidence is a comfortable coat, he took it off. They documented the moment because procedure said so, and then erased the documentation because survival said so. The report changed titles 3 times in an hour, first asset irregularity, then cultural artifact, provisional, finally classified, divine provenance. That last phrase did not come from any manual. Someone wrote it because nothing else would hold. The case swallowed the room. Devices that make bold pronouncements about composition returned little sermons about unknown lattices and non-local response. When they spoke a series of test phrases, the metal brightened under certain words and dimmed under others, as if meaning itself had a temperature the sensors could not measure but the heirloom could feel. A junior tech tried a joke, the light did not move. The historian whispered the name from the letter, a thin vein of radiance traveled like a comet's trail and vanished. No heat. No sound. Only acknowledgement. They sealed the file and salted the earth. Access lists collapsed to initials. Meeting minutes became silhouettes, who asked what, but never who was. A small team was reassigned to roles with long titles and short windows. The building forgot them in the way institutions forget only on purpose. And yet the discovery could not be undiscovered. A thing recognized as a bell rung. Rumors condensed into a fog you could walk through, a vault item that refused replication, a box that hummed when truth approached, an artifact that ignored the language of ownership and answered to the language of belonging. An economist drafted a confidential memo projecting market instability if the story ever surfaced. The graph didn't curve, it cliffed. Security didn't argue. They added layers. It was never meant to dazzle a room or flatter a throne. It was made to remember. Not jewelry. Not art. A covenant device, forged when language was closer to breath than ink, when promises were not witnessed by courts but by the sky itself. Its blueprint is not kept in archives, it is braided into a lineage. Every chosen house receives one in its first forgetting, a token that keeps the vow when people cannot. The old texts call it many names, seal, token, witness, but the closest translation is memory with a will. It does not store data, it keeps allegiance. It doesn't care for signatures, stamps, or registries. It listens for a frequency that only a living air can carry clean, truth said without bargain, mercy held without pose. Engineers tried to read it as matter, tensile strength, thermal drift, lattice symmetry, and the device humored them the way the ocean humors buckets. Every measurement returned a fact and missed the point. Because the heirloom is not built to resist force, it is built to prefer honor. Pressure does not open it. Alignment does. The alloy, if alloy is even the word, behaves like a disciplined choir. Light enters and does not merely reflect, it arranges. When falsehood fills the room, the surface takes on the color of quiet stone. When truth approaches, luminescence threads beneath like dawn moving through frost. Not a glow to impress an audience, a recognition handshake. Your ancestors called that moment the nod. There is a story told in margins and candle smoke. Once each century, the device is awakened by a sentence only the rightful can speak. Not a password, but a stance turned into sound. Those who try to mimic it find their voices measuring themselves and falling short, like counterfeit coins that ring dull against the table. The heirloom does not punish, it simply refuses to reorganize around anything but what it was sworn to. Who forged it? The records are shy. The closest survivors are instructions disguised as parables, shape light with oath. Bind metal with mercy. Teach the object to prefer the name that keeps its promises. Techniques read like liturgy, and for good reason. This isn't technology that worships power. It is technology that worships fidelity. Your lion's device carries a peculiar trait noted in 3 monasteries and 1 courtroom transcript. When spoken to in truth, it answers with clarity, not brightness. Clarity, edges sharpen, shadows behave. The world seems to tidy itself for a second, as if reality appreciates being addressed without spin. That is why they keep it buried. You cannot run certain empires on clarity. They named it inheritance key, yet there is no lock to fit it. The lock is forgetfulness. The key is remembering. When you stand inside your name without reaching for permission, the device stops being an artifact and becomes a mirror, not to your face, but to your kept word. It shows whether your yes is yes. When it is, the device behaves as though gravity has changed allegiance. They called it an interdisciplinary briefing, which is what institutions say when they are afraid to name a thing. The room was a theater of restraint, matte walls, no windows, a clock that refused to tick. 4 flags stood in the corner like polite witnesses. At the long table sat people whose signatures move nations, economists with brows like abacuses, generals who wear silence like armor, theologians who know how to name what power mispronounces, and one historian who looked as if a library had learned to breathe. On the screen, a single line in white letters. If this artifact truly belongs to them, what happens when they claim it? Nobody rushed to speak. Rushing is for those who think time is on their side. An economist cleared his throat. If ownership migrates from institutional custody to individual destiny, we model a confidence event. Liquidity convulsions, flight to, he stopped before saying safety, because safety would be the one thing no graph could locate. The narrative, he finished, would outrun the instruments. The machine that erases stories began its work, not with alarms, but with politeness. Journalists who asked the wrong question received invitations to discuss clarification and return speaking about unrelated topics. Archive requests began returning timeouts. A digital photo of the crest appeared briefly in a classified inbox, then vanished beneath a system notice, file renamed /file relocated /file no longer exists. 3 engineers were reassigned to Special Calibration Division, a department that had no website, no address, and, according to payroll, no staff. 1 archivist retired early. 1 analyst took a leave of absence to become unreachable. People don't resign from curiosity, they are relieved of it. Language shifted. The object stopped being the key, became the item, then the matter, then nothing at all. The fewer syllables a thing is given, the more dangerous it becomes. And yet, in every internal channel, buried between logistics and lunch notices, one phrase kept reappearing like a watermark pressing through ink. Custody maintained, pending divine authorization. It was supposed to be a procedural line. It read like a confession. Security chiefs pretended not to see it. Economists skimmed past it. But the theologian, who had attended the meeting, then vanished from rosters, forwarded it to one recipient outside the system. You. This is not about possession. It's about permission. They are not owners. They are placeholders. The vault does not imprison your inheritance, it is merely holding its breath until you exhale your name. Heaven allows men to guard what they cannot wield, not as a test of power, but as a test of patience. Your heirloom is not locked away because you were late, it is locked because you were not yet ready. That is mercy, not theft. But now, the alignment has begun. The recognition has occurred. And recognition activates debt. Not financial debt. Spiritual debt. They have held what was never theirs to keep. That creates imbalance. And all of creation, whether vaults, laws, or ledgers, tilts to correct imbalance. The question is no longer will it return? The question is how gracefully will they surrender it? Even their silence proves they know. Even their fear is an admission. The largest institution in the world is not bracing for invasion, it is bracing for awakening. Because what heaven seals, no institution can withhold. And what heaven assigns, no vault can delay forever. Tonight you face the simplest door in the world, a mirror. No guards. No codes. Just glass and the echo of your own breath. The vault is miles away, sleeping behind mountains of policy. The city hums, the clocks pretend they are in charge. None of it matters here. Here, your inheritance measures only one thing, whether you remember. Stand still. Let the room fall quiet enough for your heartbeat to stop performing and start speaking. Notice the small tremors in your shoulders, the ones that arrive when an old name is about to be said again for the first time. You do not need to break into anything. You do not need blueprints, allies, or a map of sublevels. The lock was never steel. The lock was amnesia. Begin with your spine. Let it tell the truth your mouth has edited. Stack each vertebra like a vow returned to its place. Lift your head as if the sky were not above you but with you. The glass will try to sell you a face. Decline the offer. Ask for a name. Say it, not the one that earns applause, the other one. The one your grandmother used when she was too tired to be poetic. The one the letter in red wax was addressed to in a hand that shook from reverence, not age. Speak it clean. Let it arrive without costume or bargaining chips. When you speak in truth, you will feel it, a slight rearranging in the air, as if a room has stood to greet a guest. Edges clarify. Shadows behave. It is not brightness, it is order. Somewhere far below Washington, a line of dull light moves beneath a metal skin like breath beneath frost. Not because you forced it, but because you matched it. Every day you remember who you are, a pin in a lock turns. Every mercy you extend, a tumbler falls. Every time you refuse the cheap victory of a lie, the code revises itself in your favor. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics in a kingdom where integrity is physics. Look closer. You'll notice the mirror doesn't reflect perfectly anymore. Not a trick of glass, an honesty of vision. It begins to show the parts of you that contracts cannot hold, patience without theatrics, courage without an audience, joy that doesn't need witnesses. The device recognizes those frequencies. The vault does not open to power. It opens to agreement. It will not look like a raid. It will look like a morning. No sirens. No headlines. A sequence of small obediences aligning until the world has no argument left. Somewhere a pen signs a transfer it cannot name. Somewhere a lock acknowledges it was only ever waiting for a voice. Paper trails will insist this is routine. Heaven will know it is return. Restoration begins in the unseen. A ledger you cannot access updates its only true column, belonging. In the margins of that page, old angels write, balanced. The vault does not hear wings, it hears an absence, the quiet that arrives when debt resolves. Machines register nothing and everything, temperatures stay steady, but the room feels lighter, as if gravity has agreed to be polite. A courier is briefed without understanding. The envelope he carries is heavy in a way weight cannot explain. On its face, your name, written with a hand that borrowed boldness. The instructions avoid nouns like relinquish and choose softer words, convey, deliver, return. Even language knows this is not a transaction. It is a surrender. On the day, doors behave. Protocols do not break, they bow. Those who sign the release do not meet each other's eyes, not because of guilt, but because awe is easiest to endure sideways. The case is brought with ceremony thinner than usual, as if the ritual fears overshadowing the reason. No speeches. No claims. A simple acknowledgement. This never belonged to us. When you receive it, you will notice two things. It is smaller than the myth and larger than your hands. The surface waits, not glowing, not performing, simply present like a mountain that has learned patience. You will not tear the seal. You will answer it. The instant your truth reaches it, clean and unbargained, the metal will do what water does when it finds its level. It will settle into you. The world around will register subtleties. Contracts will feel less like cages and more like tools. Rooms will stop asking you to prove yourself. Your steps will sound like a key finding the note the hallway was built in. Enemies will become irrelevant without needing to be defeated. Some will call it luck. Others will call it favor. You will call it home. Restoration does not arrive like a siren. It arrives like morning. No fanfare, no gavel, no parade of signatures. Just a slow, decisive rearranging, shadows releasing their claim on corners, dust deciding it no longer belongs to the air. Somewhere beneath Washington, a sensor notes a change it was not designed to measure. The log records nothing. The room records everything. There is no seizure, only surrender. Institutions understand force, they mistrust grace because grace cannot be negotiated with. But restoration is grace doing logistics. A courier route drafts itself, quiet streets, a car with no plates that anyone can see, a driver who once said a prayer he didn't know was heard. The bag is prepared. Not for transaction. For return. Paperwork still occurs. This is the world, not a fable. Forms will be filled, stamped, and archived under names that keep secrets by pretending to be boring. Interagency transfer. Cultural asset resolution. Custody remediation. Bureaucracy invents euphemisms when it cannot face the word restitution. That's fine. Heaven doesn't need the right word to do the right thing. Father of lights, author of vows and keeper of days, we stand where memory meets mercy and we lift our hands without bargaining. Let every chosen one remember what heaven never forgot. Let every hidden inheritance hear its name and turn. Where fear sat like a warden, seek peace as a witness. Where paperwork pretended to be destiny, let destiny reclaim its handwriting. Unseal what you sealed for purpose. Release what was preserved for the hour of awakening. Let custodians become couriers, and couriers become celebrants. Teach the halls of power the difference between custody and belonging, between holding and honoring. Search us, and simplify us. Strip us of the vanity that grasps, the impatience that bruises, the bitterness that clutters the hands meant to receive. Teach our mouths the cadence of truth until light recognizes our voices. Let forgiveness be our clearance level, let integrity be our password that cannot be counterfeited. For every heir wandering through the rooms of forgetfulness, hang lamps of remembrance. For every house whose crest went dim, breathe on the embers. Turn mirrors into witnesses, doors into acknowledgments, vaults into mere scenery for the scene of surrender. We renounce the poverty of spectacle and choose the wealth of order. We refuse the theater of taking and accept the grace of return. What is sworn by heaven may not be leased by men, so align our steps with your signature, steady our hearts with the patience of mountains, and tune our timing to the quiet clock of your will.